This is lesson number 2 for the chapter Force and Laws of Motion, and today we are going to discuss about the Galileo's experiment of motion of an object on an inclined plane. So when a marble rolls down an inclined plane, its velocity increases, and when it goes up on the second inclined plane, its velocity decreases. If the inclinations of both the planes are equal, then the marble will reach the same height from which it is rolled down. If the inclination of the second plane is decreased, it will travel more distance to reach the original height. And if the inclination of the second plane is made horizontal, then the marble will travel forever trying to reach the same height. An unbalanced force is required to change the motion of the marble, but no force is needed to sustain the uniform motion of the marble. So this was the Galileo's experiment on motion of an object. According to Galileo, object moves with a constant speed when no force is acting on them. This means if an object is moving on a frictionless path and no other force is acting upon it, then object would be moving forever. That is, there is no unbalanced force working on the object. Let us explain with an activity. So for the activity, the setup is in front of you. You have two cardboards inclined on an angle and the angles are equal to each other. And these cardboards offer no friction. They are smooth surfaces. So if you are going to roll down a ball from the left hand side, it will go up to the right hand side of the cardboard and it will try to attain the same height every time when you are rolling it down. Now for the second time, you reduce the height of the cardboard on the right hand side and you will observe if you are rolling down the ball, it will reach to a larger distance so as to be equivalent to the height from which it is rolled down. Now in the third condition, if you flatten up the right hand side cardboard, you will observe that after rolling down the ball will continue to move forever. But that is not possible in the practical life or in daily life because it is only possible in ideal condition when there is no opposite force acting on the motion of ball. But in day to day life we observe that moving ball will come to rest or will stop after certain time because there is opposite force acting on the motion of ball, and that force is known as the friction force. So, from his experiments on the motion of object, Galileo proposed that for a smooth plane, the ball must have perpetual motion on the horizontal portion. That is, no effort or force is required for such a motion. That is, a body continue to move along a straight line path unless some external force compels it to change that state, and that external force is known as the friction force. So what is friction? Friction is a force between two surfaces that are sliding or trying to slide across one another. For example, when you try to push a toy car along the floor, friction always works in the direction opposite from the direction of the motion of the object. It is always parallel to the plane of contact. As you can see in the picture, friction is acting opposite to the motion of the toy car. Now what are the reasons behind friction force? The major cause of the friction is the interlocking of minute projections on the surfaces which opposes the relative motion. The amount of friction depends on the materials from which the two surfaces are made. The rougher the surface, the more friction it offers or the more friction is produced. So, what is force of friction? Force of friction is the force which opposes the motion of an object over a surface. For example, a ball rolling on ground gradually slows down and comes to a stop due to force of friction. If we stop paddling a bicycle, it gradually slows down and comes to a stop due to force of friction. An object with uniform motion will continue to move with uniform motion if the forces acting on it or pushing force and frictional force are balanced, right? And if an unbalanced force acts on the moving body, then its speed or direction of motion changes. Okay, if the unbalanced force is removed, then it will continue to move with the speed it had acquired till then. So in the absence of friction, we can see, or we can think that in the absence of friction, a body under motion will continue to move forever. So no thing in this universe will be stable. Everything will be under motion, right? Because there is no opposite force exist to stop them. But that is not the practicality. Practicality is that if you give certain force, or if you apply certain force for an object, it will move up to a certain distance and will eventually come to rest. And that is only because of the presence of friction force.
Let's observe this game of cricket. As you can see, the ball, when hit by the batsman, slows down and stops after rolling a certain distance. Do you see any force being applied to stop the ball?
No. Ideally, the ball shouldn't stop, right? No one applied any force to stop it.
The ball stopped due to a force called friction. Friction is the force resisting the relative motion of two bodies that acts along the surfaces it contacts. The bat hits the ball with a certain force that makes the ball move ahead. When the ball rolls down the field, friction acts in the direction opposite to the direction of the motion of the ball. Gradually, the frictional force overcomes the force that made the ball move, slowing down and eventually stopping the ball.
Is friction the same on all surfaces?
That's a good question. Look at this.
It needed a lot of force to push the block in the first case.
And yet, in both the cases, it is the same block.
So was it the type of surface that made the difference?
Yes. Rough surfaces offer more friction, while smooth surfaces offer minimal friction. That's why, when you try pushing a wooden block kept on a rough surface, you need to apply a relatively large amount of force to move it. Conversely, if you push the same block on a slab of ice, it moves relatively fast. You find friction at work almost everywhere around you. Some examples are objects lying on a slightly inclined plane, pens, pencils, and chalk in use, automotive brakes, and force between vehicle tires and the road when in motion. This brings us to the end.
So my kids, I hope you understood what we studied today. So based on that, here is your homework. Thank you.